Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 21, Text 25. Prajapati Sutta Samran Manor Vikyata Mangala Brahmavatam Ya Adivasam Shasti Saptarnavam Mohim Prajapati Sutta Samran Prajapati Sutta Samran Manor Vikyata Mangala Manor Vikyata Mangala Brahmavatam Yodivasan Brahmavatam Yodivasan Shasti Saptarnavan Mahim Shasti Saptarnavam Mahim. Translation. The Emperor Swayambhuva Manu, the son of Lord Brahma, who is well known for his righteous acts, has his seat in Brahmavarta and rules over the earth with its 7 oceans. Purport. Sometimes it is stated that Brahmavarta is a part of Kurukshetra, or that Kurukshetra itself is situated in Brahmavarta, because the demigods are recommended to perform spiritual ritualistic performances in Kurukshetra. But in others' opinion, Brahmavarta is a place in Brahmaloka where Swayambhuva ruled. There are many places on the surface of this earth which are also known in the higher planetary systems. We have places on this planet like Vrindavan, Dwarka, and Mathura, but they are also eternally situated in Krishnaloka. There are many similar names on the surface of the earth, and it may be that in the Bor age, Swayambhuva Manu ruled this planet, as stated here. The word Mangala is significant. Mangala means one who is elevated in every respect in the opulences of religious performances, ruling power, cleanliness, and all other good qualities. Vikyata means celebrated. Swayambhuva Manu was celebrated for all good qualities and opulences. Prajapati Sutta Samran Manu Vikyata Mangala Brahmavartam Yodivasan Shasti Saptarnavan Mahim. The Emperor Swayambhuva Manu, the son of Lord Brahma, who is well known for his righteous acts, has his seat in Brahmavarta and rules over the earth with its 7 oceans. So it is interesting in this purport that Prabhupada explains quite frankly that it's impossible to know exactly where a place is that is mentioned millions of years ago. Now, not only millions of years ago, if you try to even find out a place that was hundreds of years old, you won't be able to do it, normally speaking. Just like when in that reincarnation series they tried to find this one town in England from 1700s. Now that's only 200 years ago. And they had to go through every single library and search and search and search. For days and a week they went by just searching. And finally they found it. In India also, the names change. We find that in the previous language the name was like this, but gradually it becomes twisted into another name. We find this in the various names like Bombay and Calcutta, which are names for different forms of goddess Kali. Calicut and Mumbai. These are names for goddess Kali. But by time they twist a little, because the people's speaking gets careless, and things end up like that. If you see a map from just a few hundred years ago, you'll see the names are all different. They sound vaguely similar, but they're all different, because time, language, dialect, everything changes. So this is only in hundreds of years. Now can you imagine in thousands of years? In thousands of years, the names get out of recognition or the places cease to exist. Just like there are various places on the planet where nobody even knew there was a civilization there. Just a few months ago in China, they found a whole city under the ground that they say is minimum 5,000 years old, if not older. And all the Chinese are very proud that we have the oldest civilization now. So they didn't even know the place existed. It was just dust. But underneath it was all covered over, and there everything was. But they hadn't dug there before, so they didn't know. So on and on you can just extrapolate. And older places still, nobody knows where they are or what they are. Now, we also have another circumstance. That names in one place are just like names in another place. It's like, for instance, there are cities in America, like there's one city called Lebanon. There's another city, there are other cities called London. Then there are other cities which are just like the cities which are in Europe. So, different names, same names, these are just names. The problem comes when you're trying to understand geography that goes back not hundreds of years, and not thousands of years, and not even millions of years. For instance, we are in the reign of Vaivaswata Manu. Swayambhuva Manu, his reign was 7 Manus before. Now each Manu's lifetime is 71 and a little bit Yuga cycles. And each Yuga cycle, is the incense burning on the altar? And each Yuga cycle is 4,320,000 years. So 4,320,000 times 71 times 7. So that's about 50 times 4 minus 2 billion. Isn't it? Something like 2 billion years? Wow, that was quick arithmetic. I don't know if it's true. But quite a few billion years ago. So we're talking about billions of years. Now, does anybody think that the places will be the same or the names will be the same? Of course not. In fact, in that period of time, the whole universe could have changed 20 times. Just like they say about the Earth planet, that formerly all of the continents were one. They even show exactly, there are different arguments going on how it exactly happened. But everybody agrees that they were all stuck together at one point. And at that point it looked just like that which is stated in the Bhagavatam, when it was all described in this Jambudvip business. When they put it all back together again, they always have India sticking off one end, with the Himalaya mountains separating. Always, practically. It's amazing. In other words, they say this happened hundreds and hundreds of millions of years ago. So we can understand the Vedic information on cosmology is descending from hundreds and hundreds of millions of years. For when you go back that period of time, then it starts making more sense. Yeah. So this is one of the problems that people have when they read Vedic cosmology. Because it's not like in the Vedas people are so much interested in experimental knowledge. So whatever they hear, they accept. So because the circumstances change, the information may not verify with observable reality. Therefore, there are other steps in the Veda for correcting that. Just like, for instance, the principles in the Jyotish. The principles in Jyotish Veda are so old that this is not the spiritual knowledge now. We're talking about the Upaveda, that knowledge which is supplementary to the Veda, which is meant for establishing the knowledge in society. It's like university education type stuff. So because it's so old, the Jyotish may say the moon will rise at this time, when in fact it rises 6 hours earlier because it's out of sync. So therefore there are other formulas for correcting that as well. Now, we have to understand it in this light, that things change drastically over billions of years. Therefore, one should not be so hung up if the Veda says something which doesn't observe to what you think is observable reality. Basic principles are still the same. Exactly where it is and what it looks like and where it's situated, that's another thing. We do have in the Puranas examples of a mystic yogi who flew off of the Earth planet and took a look at it. And there he speaks about, and this is in the, which Purana? Korma Purana. He speaks about seeing the globe, and the top part, one part of it looks like a what did he call it? A tortoise? No, bottom part of it looked like a tortoise, and the top part of it looked like a hare. And if you notice, the American continent, South and North Americas, they look like that. So this is some recent past in the Puranic information. This is some recent past. We're talking about thousands of years now. So the land masses look more like what they look today. So barring such direct perception, we find that the information goes for long periods of time. Like Markandeya Rishi, who's the generally considered Rishi, expert on cosmology. The problem with Markandeya Rishi is that he's millions and millions of years old. He also lived through a whole devastation at the end of the cycle of the universe. So this is of course not a problem for Markandeya Rishi. He doesn't mind being millions of years old. But it's a problem in as much as that when he gives information, you're not exactly sure which millennia it's from. It's not like it's the most recent information. And it's not that the Veda is going to waste its time with the most recent information, because probably whatever it looks like now, it won't look like in a couple of thousand years anyway. So here we have a big problem, which is being addressed in here. In other words, Prabhupada's saying quite frankly, okay, there are many places on the earth which are also known in the higher planetary systems. There are places in the earth which are also known in Vaikuntha. It is a question of names, and we're not going to figure out exactly where this is or where that is. And this authority may say, I think it's like this, and this authority may say, no, I think it's like that. In any case, that's not the point. The point is that Swayambhuva Manu lived somewhere in this universe. And he was the Manu. And Manu means you're in charge of mankind. Mankind means us, and that's just the same all the time. Those people with 2 arms and 2 legs who walk around and do fruitive activities and mainly waste their time, we are called mankind. We, mankind, we are always ruled by a Manu who gives laws through his Manu Samhita. And those laws are to be followed by mankind. And Swayambhuva Manu knows what is best for men. Men, women, we're both species of man. So, when Krishna decided to appear, he wasn't going to just appear with any father, any mother. He would appear through the womb of the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu and Kardama Muni, the great mystic yogi. In other words, he wanted to make sure those who are parents were properly qualified. Not that just anybody can become the parent of the Supreme. Now, of course, nobody's the parent of the Supreme, because Krishna is never born. Ajopi san avyayatma, bhutanam ishwaropi san, prakatim svamadhistaya sambhavami atma maya. I appear out of my own internal potency. It is not that Krishna has to take birth from a womb of a mother where a body was produced in that womb. No. Rather, he appears when he wants to, as he likes, out of his own internal potency. So out of his own internal potency, he chooses those whom he wishes to have as his father and mother. Therefore, Krishna has chosen the most qualified personalities. The most qualified personalities are on the planet at this time, and practically speaking at all time, Devahuti and Kardama Muni. and their qualifications will be very, very nicely described. Kardama Muni was such a powerful mystic yogi that he could produce in the sky a whole palace for Devahuti out of his mystic power. Mystic power is so powerful. Of course, nowadays, nobody has mystic power to even produce a little ant out of the ground. There's one so-called mystic yogi in India. Everybody knows him, the guy with the big frizzy hair. So, he's a very expert magician. He always does his so-called mystic yoga with his long sleeves. He always has sleeves which taper like this. And there was once one magician in Calcutta. I forgot his name. Sarkar. Thank you. So, this man, he went to see the guy with the fuzzy hair and said, he sent his card in with his real name. So the fellow with the fuzzy hair said, no, I don't want to see you. So then he sent a card in later on the next day with his nickname, which nobody knew, just written on a card. Then he said, okay, you can come. So the fellow with the fuzzy hair was waving his arms around and pulling things out of the air in his hair and his shirt. And he pulled out a sandesh. So this was supposed to be very wonderful. Then Sarkar waved his hands in the air this way, that pulled out a rasgulla. Sai Baba tried pulling out something else. Sarkar pulled out something else. In fact, he was better, because he's the best magician. He's the most famous in India, magician. So, he said, you're bogus. You can't pull out anything better than me, therefore I'm better than you. So if you're a god, I'm better god. And he was really chastising him like anything. Of course, they picked him up and threw him out the door, because they couldn't tolerate this. It's all bogus. Magician stuff. One of his associates said he always packs his chair where he sits full of things. And his shirts are filled with things and his hair is filled with things. That's why he's got the hair. Anyway, magic aside, we find there are real mystic yogis. And those real mystic yogis have some powers. A lot of power, in fact. Even just some hundreds of years ago, there were still persons who could do fantastic things. Walk on water, not so difficult. It was understood, if you were a Vaishnava, you had some mystic powers. It was understood. Of course, nowadays, mystic power is tough to come by. And probably good, because nobody would know how to use it. Probably go out and make a circus act of himself. So, in fact, formerly, great, great mystic yogis had very great, great mystic power. And Kardama Muni had especially exceptional mystic power. But he had never displayed it before. In fact, he was not interested in displaying it because he was not interested in the mystic power. He was performing austerities, penances, and just by the bank of his, by the side of his ashrama, he was just offering oblations in the fire and performing mystic austerities. And he was dirty. He wasn't even sparkling clean. He was very emaciated. He didn't look well fed at all. His hair was matted. You know what matted hair is? Matted hair is a heavy stuff. When your hair is all long, then what you do is you take some gunk which comes from a tree and you put it all together. You don't have to comb it anymore because it's all in one chunk. It's all like just solid hair. The mystic yogis, they do like that. They make their hair all solid like that around. So they never have to worry about it anymore. And it just keeps on growing because sometimes when they are meditating, the fingernails get very, very long. And the hair gets very, very long and just grows all over the place. Because they're sitting in one spot so long. And hair and nails, it just keeps on growing all the time. If you can stop all the other aspects of the bodily respiration, but these things just keep on growing. Even in dead bodies they grow. Very strange substances, hair and nails. Because they are at the same time living and dead. That's how Lord Nrsingadev got away with killing Hiranyakashipu with his nails, because they are at the same time living and dead. In the same nail, it's living and dead. you can cut the stuff that's a little white because it's dead. But if you dare touch that which is a little pink, ooh, you go through the roof. So it's living and dead in the same thing. Incredible, isn't it? Nails are mystical. How they start, where they go, it's incredible, these things. So in mystic yogis, they have very long and everything. So mystic yogis are not very beautiful to look at. In fact, they are rather frightening to look at. They are skinny like anything, just bones and skin and hair and nails, and they just sit in one place. So Devahuti was serving her husband like that, who was in such a condition. She was very, very properly serving him. And she also were laying on the ground. Although she was a princess from the heavenly planets, she was laying on the ground. They just lay straight on the ground. No blanket, no nothing, no mattress, nothing. Just straight on the ground. And she was also performing austerities like that. And she was also very, very skinny, looked all out of color. Her hair was also completely wild. Because they had no way, they had no brushes and combs and oils and bathing soaps and tubs and this and that. It was just austerity. But Kardama Muni was so powerful mystically that when it was time for production of children, because he promised, this is part of his business, in order that Krishna may appear as Lord Kapila Dev. So he gave Devahuti the ability to become rejuvenated completely, look like a beautiful girl again. And he also transformed into a beautiful man and made a beautiful palace in the sky. By his mystic power, such mystic power, you can just take energy and make matter from it. Because energy is superior to matter. So if you know the art, which we're not going to explain here, you can take, it sounded good, didn't it? You take energy and then you make matter. And for those who have mystic power, it's no problem for them. They just take energy and make matter. It's like they can walk on the sky. It's no problem for them. They just step up on the air, make a sound, and just step up on it, and away they go. So, no problem for them. In fact, they don't even have to explain it. They just say, you just make a sound and step, and there you go. And as for us, we just scratch our head and wonder, what are they talking about? Because there's no understanding in our lives of such mystic opulences. But Kardama Muni was such a mystic yogi. He had unlimited power to do what he wanted. And yet, although so much power, and although he had so much opulence when he displayed that power, and so much sense gratification, when it was the proper time, Kapila Dev was produced, and then he immediately left home to go into the forest for complete renunciation. That is truly a great soul. Others, as soon as there's a little opulence, as soon as there's a little sense gratification, become so attached, the thought of leaving this practically gives them a heart attack. Leave this? What? Never. Kardama Muni simply got up and walked out of home. Actually, he was going to do it even before Kapila Dev appeared. Devahuti said, please, leave me with a son who can free me from all this attachment the same way you're free. Because you may be walking away from home, that's good for you, but me, I'm completely attached and completely going mad. So therefore Kardama said, all right, and gave her a son, Kapila Dev, who taught her as her guru. Her son became her guru. To teach her, of course he was the Supreme Lord himself, how to become detached, and she followed the path of her husband as well, in great detachment. So we're not dealing here with ordinary circumstances. We're dealing here with very, very, very special circumstances. Therefore, the whole history is described. Because sometimes people, they want to utilize these mystic opulences and develop their sense enjoyment from it. So the Bhagavatam is explaining how the great souls took care of such desires, how they became so great, and how we are so unable to follow in their footsteps that better we just take the straight method of Krishna consciousness. Chanting Hare Krishna, developing our Krishna consciousness, becoming spiritually purified. In this way, we'll be able to overcome these intense attachments of this material world, because we don't have the capacity or the power to do it, as was done formerly by such great souls like Kardama Muni. In any case, we are starting off the story of how this all took place, because Krishna, Vishnu here, who has appeared before Kardama Muni, is explaining to him exactly what is going to happen by Krishna's previous arrangement. He said in previous verse, here we go, Puraiva samyojitat, I've already arranged it in the past, what you need. What you require has already been arranged by me, because I've already known what you want. But I already know why you want what you want, because this is the arrangement of the Lord. So certainly when Krishna arranges something, nothing's lacking. When you require it, it's there. That is the wonder of Krishna's arrangement. When you require something, it's there by his arrangement. He puts it there so that you need it, so that you have it when you need it. We may have had experience sometimes of doing something which is according to Krishna's plan. So at that time, all the elements for accomplishing that plan are there, somehow, mystically, coming out of nowhere. Just when you require, boom, there it is. And you don't know how it happened. We have many experiences of that. I remember also, previous time, money was very scarce. In fact, money was extremely scarce. Whatever you could collect on the street by distributing back to Godheads that day, that's what you had to spend that night, and generally it was all gone before noon the next day. This is called living from hand to mouth. Whatever's in the hand goes in the mouth. That's it, finished. No more in stock. So, Prabhupada was coming, and we wanted to finish an altar, but it cost a lot of money, thousands of dollars. Who even had the slightest idea where to get thousands of dollars? Just the marble alone was going to cost something like $1,500. Nobody had the faintest idea where it was going to come. Somebody walked into the temple the next day and gave a check to the president for $5,000. And we all just paid our obeisances to that check, knowing well that this came from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and immediately spent it within 2 days. So when Krishna, because that's the way the Brahmana works, it is stated like that. The Brahmanas know everything's under Krishna's control. Therefore, they know that whatever they collect by the evening, they spend the next day in the service of the Lord. Of course, some Brahmanas would do that with such religiosity that they had no way to maintain themselves or their families. We find in the Vasudeva Dutt was such a wonderful devotee that he would always spend everything on the service of the Lord. Whatever he collected, he immediately spent. But he was in such a poverty condition, it was getting serious, that Lord Chaitanya asked Shivananda Sen, who was an expert businessman, to kindly manage the accounts of Vasudeva Dutt so that he wouldn't lose everything and be in such a condition. But Brahminical cultures like that, whatever you get, you immediately spend it on the service of the Lord. You don't like to store anything anywhere, because anything can happen to the stored money. Therefore, one always spends it in the service of Krishna. And therefore, there's nothing to lose, because it's always gone anyway in Krishna's service. We like to always follow that procedure by just printing a lot of books and storing our wealth in books. Formerly, they used to store the wealth on the arms and legs of the wives. You still see it today in the villages in India. The ladies have these huge gold bracelets, which are just like solid gold. Huge. I mean, they're really thick things. And that's where all the wealth of the family is stored. Because formerly, nobody would dare touch a woman. Even a thief wouldn't rob from a woman like that, who had the golden bracelets. They would never dare do such a thing. It was just completely out of the culture. Nowadays, if you're wearing even a little bracelet, they'll knock you over the head, kill you, and take it. Of course, this is a different culture. This is the culture of the animals. Formerly, it was the culture of human beings. So, we find that Brahminical culture is, of course, a little different than this present culture. And as we will go through various verses, we will see that important points will be discussed. How a girl is given in marriage to a husband. Why? Tomorrow we can go through those verses. Very pertinent information for this land of girls. And everybody's swallowing that one for a while. And we will find how this is actually within the Dharma, or religious principles. Actually, nowadays, nobody cares about these things. But the Dharma, or the religious principles, also took care to make sure that children were properly brought into the various stages of life. It wasn't like a girl is thrown into the street and said, okay, do what you like. But everyone is brought into the proper stages of the different ashramas. The varnas and ashramas. Everything was there systematically trained. Nowadays, of course, there's no training for any varna or any ashram. But that training must be there from the earlier times. That is why the Gurukul institution must become a varnashram training ground. That all of the students understand very well what is their role and what is their social role and their ashrama status. What they are to be, and then they learn very well how to act in that role. General classification is there. Because we have found that many persons develop many mental problems. They have problems in their mind because they don't understand what they should be or what they are. They think of themselves in one way, but they don't understand that actually they're in another way. Yeah. It's like we have one phenomena in our... it's not so bad anymore, but there was a period of time when the Krishna consciousness movement was filled with people who were musicians. There was like maybe, I don't remember, maybe 10, 11 years ago. Practically everybody who joined was a musician. And everybody thought their whole goal of life was to be a musician. I mean, this was a phenomena that took place. And the presidents were going crazy trying to figure out what to do with all these musicians. Because after all, I mean, you can play the mridanga, you can play the harmonium and the kartal. So that's great. We all do that together. So then, we found that factually speaking, none of them were actually musicians by their varna. Because a musician is a pure Sudra by varna. He's somebody who just pleases the public. Somebody you throw some money to, and he plays a ditty on whatever thing he's got, and that's all. Then you pack up and go away. In fact, it's like that. But in our society, this modern world, musicians, artists, theater dramatists, poets, all the mundane poets who are simply satisfying senses, these persons, they are actually all Sudras. But they're being respected as great philosophers. Whatever they say, everybody listens to. Even though in the brain, there's no brain. But they are being respected and listened to as if they were great saintly personalities who should guide the whole society. Therefore, the whole society is going completely to hell. The wrong class of man is accepted as intellectual. Similarly, so-called professors in the university, who think that they are the body and nothing more, who think that they are simply meant to enjoy sex with the young girls who come to their school classes. Such persons who have no good qualities whatsoever, they are not to lead society, but unfortunately in the modern society they don't understand this, so they have such persons as leaders. Svavyavrastokarai samstuta purusha pashu. Persons who are on the level of animal worship a bigger animal in the forest. Just like the rabbits, the deer, the other squirrels, and they all worship the lion. Dear lion, don't eat us, please. You are the greatest. We worship you. We bow down before you. Please don't eat us. This is what's going on in the forest. Because he's the biggest animal, with the biggest mouth, and the biggest teeth, and the biggest lust. So therefore, because he's the biggest animal, the little animals worship him. And similarly in the modern society, we find that little animals worship big animals. It's no longer human society, because that which is proper quality of life is not accepted as proper quality of life. That which is good is accepted as bad, and that which is bad is accepted as good, because everything's about face, vice versa, upside down. Therefore, persons like Swayambhuva Manu would not be appreciated as great leaders, because they are, after all, clean, kind, merciful, gentle, but powerful, courageous, strong, determined, knew the Shastra, followed the religious principles, didn't step outside of the religious principles, even if it seemed that they should, to accomplish some goal. Therefore, such persons were not appreciated. Nowadays, the way you become a leader is, you either bribe off enough persons so they support you, or you get bribed by the business concerns to do just what is necessary so that businesses can make more money, then they put you in the position. Or you have to be a very good actor so that you can convince the people that you've got everything together, even though you haven't the faintest idea what's going on. The people, your advisors, they have to say like this, say like this. And you have to rehearse a press conference for 6 or 8 hours before each one. Otherwise, you won't know what to say when they ask you a question, because you don't know anything. We have even seen in our Krishna consciousness movement one personality also like that. Didn't know anything about anything. Had to always be told. But this is not leader. Leader means, in fact, like Swayambhuva Manu, you know everything about everything. And you have very good qualities. And you have very expert vision to understand deeply affairs. Therefore, Swayambhuva Manu, he knew his daughter was looking for just a certain kind of a person. And Swayambhuva Manu didn't go into the cities to look for a rich, aristocratic, wealthy, good-looking. No. He went for the most austere, advanced personality he could find for handing his daughter, inspired by the Supreme Lord. So, this is a first-class man. A first-class man doesn't do things according to what would seem to be very good by one's material opulences or material sense gratification that is available. They do things on the basis of what is the best for spiritual life. What will bring me, the living entity, to Krishna consciousness? What will bring me to the platform of perfection? And what will bring others to that platform too? And they will only act on that basis. On the basis of what gives the spiritual advancement, progressive advancement. And they will not act simply on the basis of what seems to be good according to the body or the mind or the circumstances. There's a whole different culture. And our Krishna consciousness movement is based on that different culture. Therefore, sometimes when people come from outside, they become bewildered because they can't understand. What I'm doing doesn't give me sense gratification. Here we are working like mad to do something that's not going to give me sense gratification. After all, we make a new kitchen, we don't make a new kitchen. The prasadam that comes out is dependent on the cook. We're going to just take the same cooks that are in this kitchen and move them to the other kitchen. So in fact, making a new kitchen has nothing to do with sense gratification. Making a temple room has absolutely nothing to do with sense gratification. Because it's not us who are going to enjoy. Maybe we'll have a little more space. But besides that, we won't even have nice windows. It's not a question of sense gratification. We're working on something in the roof, but that's later. It's not a question of sense gratification. We're doing this for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And nobody's going to enjoy it except Krishna. And that's a completely different point of view. To work entirely for the satisfaction of someone else is unknown in the human society. Unknown, completely unknown. Even somebody works for the satisfaction of another, but he only does it so long as the other person either appreciates him, and thus he feels good, or he has a feeling within himself, I am good. See what I have done. Then he likes that, or the other person pays him. Otherwise, he will not work for the satisfaction of another. These elements in our movement, what we are doing here, working completely for the satisfaction of the Lord and spiritual master, which means Krishna. Not that they're the same, but rather spiritual master's satisfaction and Krishna's satisfaction. We find completely negates the whole direction of the mundane society. Therefore, sometimes people, when they come here, they cannot understand it. But still, they get swept up in the mood sometimes. We find that sometimes when the materialists come, and they're around devotees who are working hard, they get into the mood of doing it really well. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, sure. Finally, they see some direction in their life. Like, yeah, it's good to do it good. Like, a little pride is there. After all, when you see your work simply as money, then you just want to finish it as fast as possible. You couldn't care less if the materials are no good. You couldn't care less if it doesn't look good or not. You just want that it's done, so at the end you get money. That's all. Finished. But if you're doing it for the satisfaction of Krishna, you want it to be very nicely done. Because the Lord has to appreciate that. Therefore, we are acting with full determination to satisfy Krishna. And we are not concerned with satisfying ourselves. Rather, we will satisfy ourselves because we have satisfied Krishna. And that's all. If you satisfy Krishna, then you are satisfied automatically. But if one tries to satisfy himself somehow, avoiding the satisfaction of Krishna, then everything's a failure. Therefore, this whole Krishna consciousness movement is based on activity for the satisfaction of Krishna. That is why every day we are chanting 16 rounds Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And following all these programs so that we may become enlivened in Krishna consciousness, so that we remember the whole point is to satisfy Krishna. And by doing that, we also satisfy Krishna. And therefore, we engage ourselves with full enthusiasm in activities to satisfy the Lord. And one who surrenders to that becomes satisfied himself, fully, completely, and totally. And one who doesn't want to surrender to Krishna, who thinks, no, I do everything for myself, he suffers always. Why? Because you cannot satisfy yourself. Outside of satisfying Krishna, there's no way to satisfy the self, because the self is not the body. Even if you satisfy the body, you're still going to be lacking. One has to satisfy the Lord, and that's the only way to satisfy the self. So let us satisfy Krishna very nicely. Hare Krishna.